Some stories refuse to stay in the past. Meyer Lansky died in 1983. Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019, 36 years apart. Different eras, different worlds, different crimes. And yet, when you lay the two lives side by side and look at the structure underneath, not the surface details, not the names or the dates or the specific charges, what you find is something difficult to dismiss as coincidence. The same architecture, the same logic, the same understanding of how power actually works when the people who hold it refuse to hold it visibly. Start with the most basic thing. Both men built systems that depended on knowing things about powerful people that those powerful people would strongly prefer not to have known. Lansky understood this early. His Blue Suite operation in the 1950s, the parties at the Plaza Hotel, the carefully arranged situations, the documentation of what happened, was not about entertainment. It was about leverage, about creating a permanent, silent, mutually understood relationship between himself and the people in those rooms. A relationship that no one would ever discuss openly. A relationship that protected him precisely because it could never be acknowledged by anyone who wanted to remain in their position. The specific details of Epstein's operation differed. The technology differed. The geography differed. The nature of what was documented differed in ways that are morally significant and should not be minimized. But the underlying principle, that knowledge of the right kind, held by the right person, is a form of currency that never depreciates, was the same. Both men understood something that most people only half understand, that the most durable form of protection is not legal immunity. It is the kind of mutual knowledge that makes prosecution inconvenient for everyone involved. This is not a comfortable idea. It is also not a conspiracy theory. It is the observation that two men, operating in different decades, arrived independently at the same structural understanding of how leverage works, and that the leverage held, in both cases, for a very long time. The financial invisibility ran parallel too. Lansky, at the height of his power, was estimated by the FBI to control somewhere in the region of $300 million. When he died, they found 57,000. The gap between those two numbers is where a lifetime of financial architecture lived. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, layered structures across multiple jurisdictions, money that existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The government knew it was there. They could not touch it. Epstein managed money for some of the wealthiest people on Earth. The precise nature of those arrangements, who he managed for, what he received in return, how the money actually moved, was never fully established in any legal proceeding. His declared wealth never quite explained how he lived the way he lived. The gap between what was visible and what was real was, in its way, as elegant as anything Lansky had built. Both men were also genuinely intelligent, not in the way that gets you good grades, but in the specific applied way that lets you look at a system and see immediately where the gaps are, where the leverage can be applied, where the pressure will hold. This kind of intelligence is rare. When it appears in people who are also willing to operate outside conventional ethical constraints, the results tend to be extraordinary and very difficult to prosecute. The intelligence is not incidental, it is the mechanism. The untouchability worked the same way for both. Lansky was investigated by the FBI for 40 years. Epstein was investigated multiple times across multiple jurisdictions. Both reached accommodations with legal processes that left observers profoundly unsatisfied. In both cases, the same explanation kept surfacing, that the people who would have been implicated by a full accounting had interests in ensuring that the full accounting did not occur. Neither man was protected by innocence. Both were protected by the particular vulnerability of the systems that should have prosecuted them. Consider what it meant to sit across a table from either of these men and understand what they knew about you, not what they might allege, what they actually knew, what they had documented. That knowledge changes the nature of every subsequent interaction. It is not a threat that needs to be stated. It is a condition of the relationship, present in the room without ever being spoken, shaping every decision both parties make. This is leverage in its most refined form. It does not require enforcement. It requires only that both parties understand it exists. Both men also had an unusual relationship with their own visibility. Lansky spent 60 years being photographed from across the street by agents who were looking for a criminal and seeing a small, quiet, unremarkable elderly man who walked his dog along Collins Avenue. The criminal was real. The small, quiet man was also real. The gap between those two realities was the most carefully maintained asset in his entire portfolio. Epstein was more visible in certain respects. The Palm Beach mansion, the private island, the social calendar that included heads of state and Nobel laureates. But the visibility was itself a kind of concealment. What people saw was an eccentric, extraordinarily wealthy financier. What was underneath, the specific nature of the leverage, the precise structure of the arrangements, the full list of what he knew, remained in a different register entirely. Both men were hiding in plain sight. The method was different. The principle was the same. There is also something worth saying about the environments that surrounded both men, the ordinary people who noticed things and said nothing, or said something that no one listened to. Lansky's neighbors on Collins Avenue noticed the FBI car across the street and stopped remarking on it. People who encountered Epstein across his years of operation noticed things that, in retrospect, should have prompted harder questions than they received. In both cases, the combination of power, wealth, and the particular human reluctance to be the person who asks the question that makes everyone uncomfortable provided a form of insulation that the legal architecture alone could not have produced. Then there is the ending. Lansky died in January 1983 in a modest apartment on Collins Avenue, with his wife Teddy beside him. Whatever he knew went with him. Epstein died in August 2019 in a federal detention facility, while awaiting trial on charges that would have, for the first time, required the full exposure of what he had done and what he knew. His death was ruled a suicide. The questions that his trial would have answered remain unanswered. Lansky was never tried for what he actually did. Epstein died before his trial began. In both cases, the secrets did not survive the man who held them. This comparison is not an argument that both men were equivalent in their crimes or their moral responsibility. They were not. The specific harms caused were different in kind, in magnitude, and in their direct human cost. What the comparison is, stated carefully, is a structural analysis, a way of looking at two systems of operation that shared certain features in two different eras, and asking what those shared features tell us about the environments that produced them, about the accountability mechanisms that failed in both cases to function as they were designed to function. Lansky built his operation in a world without global financial transparency or digital paper trails. Epstein operated in a world with all of those things, and still the gaps were there. Lansky's story is 60 years old. The structural lessons of his operation are not. They are as current as the most recent unanswered question in the most recent high-profile case. Some stories refuse to stay in the past. The architecture Lansky built was one of them. The question it raises about gaps and who finds them and what happens when they do has not been answered. It is still being asked.